at any given point. That's how fast it is processing things through, right? That's multiplexing. That means as the workload comes, I do your job, and then I'm ready to help somebody else from a dialogue work processes standpoint.
What's this multiple screen means? But exactly is it screen the data or is it turning multiple?
Screen means like this is a screen, right? So yeah, so when you do any transaction, right? So you will have one screen full of information, you fill it in, hit next, you'll go to the next screen, fill it in, yeah. So a transaction, till you are ready to save it, you must have gone through 7 or 8 screens, let's say. So pagefuls of information, right, which you are either reviewing or you are entering. And if you're doing it, you know, what it's saying is each screen, as you move from one screen to another, you're pulling more information or submitting more information, you could go to a different dialog work process. So if let's say if I do a transaction, very simple, /NSU01, which you guys would look at the recording from last week in the intro class, right, is if I just bring up my user and I say display, so second screen, right? There's an hourglass. If I go to a different tab, right, these are all different screens coming up. And behind the scenes, it's going to the database to get the information. And it could use a different dialog work process each time. And while I'm trying to review the information, it's think time. There's nothing happening at the background. Right? That's why with fewer work processes, it's able to sustain a large number of load, at least 1:10 ratio, right? Sometimes even more.
Is there any best practice defined for it? Like say if you have a workload of 1,000 users, for example, I mean, just
1:10 is where you start with.
Oh, okay.
For concurrent users, right? Not named users.
Right.
Concurrent users, that means, you know, and between named users and concurrent users, the ratio in an OLTP application is 1:3. That if you're saying that I've got, in a given time zone, in North America, if I've got 3,000 named users, you will see, if you do concurrent users, roughly 1,000 of them logged on at the same time. Right, in the same time.
Has left the conference.
Different time zone, it could be totally, right, day and night difference, right? So.
Ajay?
Yes.
Is there any limitation for the work number of work process in each application server?
No, that means how many you can define? That's what you're asking.
I can define. Is there any like memory, bit memory and work process? Is there any relationship?
Yeah, it means each work process will require memory, which is going to get allocated to it, especially as it's being used by different programs, right? Depends on what program is running in the work process, how much memory it's going to consume. But in addition to that, there is also a physical limit there's a parameter which you need to define. You know, when you say how many work processes are going to run, that parameter, and you're going to see this transaction later on, is in RZ11, RDIS work process number dia, right? So if I look at this parameter, it says minimum 2, right? We studied minimum 2, maximum 100. So on a given instance, you cannot go above 100 work processes of one kind on a given instance, right? But you can always have another instance on the same server.
Okay.
This is the theoretical limit which SAP has imposed on the profile parameter itself. This profile parameter RDIS is for dispatcher, work process, number, dialog, which means number of dialog work processes. So right now in SD1, the minimum is 2, maximum is 100, and we are running it at 8. Right?
Mr. Ajay,
Yes.
this is Lalit. You have just told that we can set the range of the parameters like minimum from 2 to 100. But how do we define? Where do we define the value that a dialog work process can handle at more than 10 work processes? More than 10 users. Sorry.
Right. I don't think that's what, is that what you're asking, that where do we define how many users? You are saying that where does the value 8 specified is what you're asking, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's different than how many users can use that work process. It just means how many work processes are there. This 8 means that if I do transaction /n SM50, I see 8 dialogues, right? Right now, 0 to 7. This UPD is an op mode switch, which we'll talk about later, right? How did one dialog change to an update? But it would have been from 0 to 7, which is 8. You define this in transaction RZ10, which we'll also learn later, where you define number of work processes or change the profile parameters. So if I go to RZ10, I can bring up my profile. So if I bring up my profile for SD1, DWebMax 00 Saraswati, if I bring this up, right, I can display it to see, who last changed it, etc. And I can also say that I need to do basic maintenance on it and go to change mode to do that basic maintenance. And here I can change the number of dialogue, right? Go up, go down. This is how I maintain the profile values. This is basic maintenance, only it's telling me, half a dozen for the work processes, half a dozen for the memory, the key ones. But there are thousands of profile parameters you can set. So if you go to extended mode, you can put any value in there for any of the profile parameters. Right. Don't save it if you guys are doing this. So here they are graphically showing you that they did one transaction which had got 2 screenfuls. First screen got processed by the first dialog work process. The second screen got processed by the second dialog work process. But between the first screen and the second screen, typically there's some relationship, right? That means whatever information you had entered in the first screen should be known to the second screen as well, right? So if you move from one dialog work process to the other dialog work process, what happened to that information? That's what's called the user context, and that user context is stored in extended memory. That means it is stored in the SAP instances, extended memory, and these dialog work processes essentially map to that extended memory to read from it and to write to it.
Is there any limit of extended memory, or it's again a portion of RAM, right?
Yes, it's a portion of RAM. So you could SAP itself is not putting any limit, on what you can define in and around extended memory. There might be some theoretical limit, but typically you are bound by the physical RAM. It's just like when you're doing an SGA in an Oracle instance.
Is there any parameter for that, or
Yes.
it's automatic?
No, there is a parameter, right? Yeah. So just like in any, like the Oracle data buffers you define, right? It is the parameters, same way. Extended memory, there are parameters. Same transactions, RZ11, RZ10 are used for those parameters also. What we just saw for RDIS work process number dia, right? So they are the extended memory parameters, and I can actually show them to you if I go to RZ11 anything which starts with EM is for extended memory. / asterisk is the wildcard, right? And then if I do F4, which would be drop-down list box, I'm going to see all extended memory parameters. So initial size MB and max size MB, right? What do I want to start with and where do I want to maximize? EM / right? So if I choose initial size MB, display, it says that the initial size of extended memory pool is 128 megabytes, initial. And from there it can grow. Typically on productive systems, you will see that initial size is at 2 gig. And you go from 2 gig to 16, 20 gigs.
Extended memory area is only used for the user context.
No, number of different things. User context is one of them.
That is one of them.
Yeah. And so that's so we looked at the logon mechanism. We looked at word process multiplexing. You know, different dialog word processes being used. Next here, what they talk about is how do you set up your SAP logon pad, right? When you need to connect to a specific system. Most important here is how do you set it up if you need to do logon load balancing, right? Which is different than if you just want to directly connect. So if you've got multiple application servers running and you want to do logon load balancing, what kind of setup do you need to have, to be able to do logon load balancing? And that's going to be the exercise what we are going to focus on. And this is not trivial because number of different data files, INI files, etc. are involved in doing this exercise. And also the files you change or work with differ depending on whether you have got Windows XP or you've got Vista / Windows 7. So on Saraswati machine, we have got 2 instances running. So if I do ps -ef grep dweb mags, I see the first instance, right, dweb mags 00. And if I do ps -ef grep d02, I see the second dialog instance, d02. So 2 instances running for the same SID, but both the instances are running on same host. So the first instance, dwebmax00, is the dispatcher is going to have what port number? 32? 100. And D02 is going to have, the dispatcher for it is going to have what port number? 3202. 3202, right? So these are the 2 instances running, and you can actually look at them in transaction /n SM51. Remember, all these transactions I'm showing to you, last page of your book, start putting down the transaction name and the transaction code, right? Because half the battle is to know what these transactions are, right? Because that will significantly improve your ability